to ask her questions or make comments if you wish to, and we will have the phone number posted. We'll do that after we've had a short break. So we're very glad you're here, and we're delighted, Marian, that you're here tonight in Wellington. Your very busy schedule. I understand you were born in Michigan and you moved to Columbus at age 9. Is that right? And then you went to Canton when you went to high school in Canton. Which brings up the question, did you go to Canton McKinley?
Of course.
Good. So you're a football fan?
No.
No. Let's see, you studied at Kent State, and then you transferred to Ohio University, got a BA.
Right.
Was that in psychology? And then you, I found this interesting, in World War II years, you worked in Cincinnati for Procter & Gamble for a little bit.
No, actually I didn't work in Cincinnati.
Oh,
I worked for a defense corporation of Procter & Gamble, but it was in the Deep South.
Oh, in the Deep South, all right. I don't know where I got Cincinnati. So it's further south than Cincinnati. Okay. And then you received a master's degree, I believe. And where was that?
Yale.
At Yale. And that was in industrial psychology, is that correct? And then you went on and got a PhD, also in industrial psychology.
No, in clinical psychology.
That was in clinical at that point, all right?
I changed fields in the middle.
Okay. That was. You found the clinical more interesting than the industrial?
Well, actually, the point was that being a woman and hoping to have a family, I needed to have something that I could work at less than 72 hours a week. And as an industrial psychologist, I was always working.
Okay, and let's look at my notes here. You followed that up by receiving, I believe, an American Board Diploma in Clinical Psychology. Your husband, John, joined the Oberlin College Mathematics Department in 1953. I believe, is that the right year?
That's correct.
And during the years that he was alive, and you were living, I believe, for a lot of the time on Glenhurst Drive, is that right? Or
well, actually,
Robin Park?
It was Parkwood Lane.
Parkwood Lane. You became known something of a gourmet cook. Am I correct on that? And
am I allowed to interrupt and correct you?
You may.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the biggest story that went the rounds was that we're building a house. We built the house in '57.
Okay.
And we were. Everybody said talking to the workmen and so on, that there are 2 kitchens in the house. Actually, it wasn't. It was one big kitchen with 2 distinct workspaces, and so we had to make up silly rejoinders for people who said to us, "I hear you have 2 kitchens," and I said, "Yeah, some days we don't speak to each other," but we both cooked.
And of course, in Oberlin, people would believe that.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, some days it was true.
Now, did you write a cookbook?
I've got one in the works I've had for a long time. After John had a heart attack and bypass surgery, he was determined, and I was determined, that he wouldn't have to give up any of the pleasure he got from food and wine. But this meant that I had to sanitize a lot of the recipes and get a lot of the cream and the butter and so on out of them, and I enjoyed doing that, and it worked pretty well. So I just collected them, and I've never published them.
Oh, I see. But you thought about it.
Oh, yeah.
You have thought about it.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Well, let's see. Why don't you tell us something about how your family got to Ohio from Michigan? What started that pilgrimage?
Well, I think it's more fun to start back a little further.
Oh, okay.
My father and mother met on the West Coast. My father was a Californian. My mother came from Illinois. And when my father proposed marriage to my mother, my grandmother said, my maternal grandmother said, of course you can marry this nice young man, that is assuming that he's everything you say he is, but he's going to have to come east. I'm not going to have you living out there. You know, she wanted her daughter and her grandchildren to be close to her. So I think my father must have taken a pin, and just pushed it east of the Mississippi and stuck it in the map, and here it came up in Detroit.
I see.
So he managed somehow through some contacts or other. He was always very interested in clothing, men's clothing and boys' clothing. And he managed somehow or other to get a job in Detroit, which I think later, knowing my grandmother, he was very smart. It was 400 miles east or 300 miles east of Chicago, Aurora. So we lived there while my father worked there, and then he changed jobs. And we went to Columbus, and so the family picked up and moved. And then about 5 years later, he was transferred to Canton, and he stayed there until virtually until he died.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's how
So
the migration occurred.
The migration occurred, following father.
And let me then take that a step further and ask you two things. How did you get interested in psychology, and what led you to Yale?
Well, psychology, because my brother was taking a course in freshman psychology and brought his textbook home, and I started to read it and was fascinated. The other thing is, I think that probably my high school librarian, this is something you will empathize with, knew what I was interested in.
I'm getting quivery, just go ahead.
And gave me a copy of The Interpretation of Dreams. And so I started to read, and I was about 14 at the time, and I read everything I could get my hands on. I read Jones's Freud papers, so that by the time I was a freshman in college, which is why I transferred from Kent State to Ohio U, by the time I was a freshman in college, I was determined I was going to be a psychologist. But of course, very few people could even spell the word in those days. So there was no major in psychology at Kent State available in those days. How things have changed. But I could have one in education, but I was determined that I was afraid that if I got an education, I would be automatically shunted into school teaching, which is really not what I wanted to do. And so I transferred to Ohio U and got a degree with a major in psychology. And I was out working, as you said, in the Deep South for Procter & Gamble during the war, and the chair of my undergraduate department wrote to me and said there was a full tuition plus stipend scholarship available in the field of industrial, which is where I wanted to go. And I applied, and lo and behold, they let me in.
Good.
So that's how it worked.
Now you got it to Yale. Wonderful. Were you sort of a Freudian persuasion psychologically as those early days?
Not really. I was definitely behavior oriented and industrial engineering oriented, but the Freudian emphasis really kind of acted as a sort of humanizing influence for me, and I didn't apply it actually on the job. Matter of fact, it was pretty unpopular in a lot of places, as you may know.
Yes. So after you came to Oberlin, you established yourself as a professional counselor, I believe.
Well, the first thing I did when I came in '53, there wasn't anybody who knew what to do with a clinical psychologist, and I was unemployable for the first year. And matter of fact, first year. And so by common consent, my husband and I agreed that we really would be better off if I would get a part-time job. And so I was contacted by the superintendent of schools in Lorraine and went to Lorraine as a part-time school psychologist for almost 3 years. Then went to the what was then the Child Welfare Board to manage the classes for retarded children in the community for another 2 or 3 years. And it was only after that and the next sabbatical that I came back, and people said they needed me as a therapist at Children's Services. And that's how I got started.
Are you still doing some of that?
Not for money. I consult or talk with groups of people as I'm needed, but I no longer do fee-for-service work.
All right, now let me ask you, you're into so many things, it's hard to know just what to focus on, but let's tackle some of these and talk as long or as little about them, the individual ones as you wish. One that rather fascinated me was the sibling program at Allen Hospital. What was your role in that, and what was it?
Well,
or is it?
My big emphasis, Dick, in psychology has been as much prevention as cure, and as treatment. And I see my role as a human being and as a psychologist, because I have special training and skills, to prevent misery whenever possible. And one of the most miserable conditions I know of is a child whose mother is expecting a baby, and the child doesn't know what it's going to mean in his or her life. I had that in my own family. I saw it a couple of times. And I also have seen it in other kids, of course, in the clinic. So it turned out that one of my social work friends' sister was expecting a second child, and everybody in the family was worried about how the older one was going to accept the baby. And she came to me and said, "Do you have any kind of book that you can recommend that we could use with my nephew?" And I said, "Well, I'll look and see," because there are a lot of books about how to deal with the loss of a grandfather or the loss of a parent or a divorce and whatnot. And I did a bit of library research, couldn't find anything. And so I started to put together some ideas, and I spoke to a friend of mine and said, how do we get kids ready when in the hospital? Do we have any kind of training program? We were talking then at Allen Hospital about a program where kids were going to be able to visit the mother, which was unheard of in the days when I was childbearing. So the kids were going to be able to visit and see the new baby in the hospital. How are we going to get them ready? Because hospital is potentially a very threatening place to children, and you have to defuse that in order to make them comfortable. So all of these factors came together, plus I have a young colleague who was then expecting a baby and a second baby. And I said, what do you think about, maybe I could write a book or something, a little workbook that the kids could use. And she said that would be a great idea. She talked with the hospital because she, as a patient and potential patient, and the hospital maternity and obstetrics department was very eager to set up some sort of orientation for children who were going to visit the hospital. So these factors all happened to come together, and so I eventually wrote a little book and tested it, and eventually it was published. And we now, for the last 7 years, we've been giving it away in the hospital as part of the sibling training program.
I believe the title's "Here's Our Baby."
Here's Our Baby.
I like that.
That's right.
And that's
Yeah.
still available.
Yeah, it's still available. As a matter of fact,
Oh, she brought it. Oh,
I
that's
brought
wonderful.
one so you could see it. It is
Does it have pictures? Oh, look at that.
actually
Hold that up.
it is culture neutral in that there are no recognizable ethnic figures. Everything is design, and it's also unusual in that the child writes things in the book, and we have
Wonderful.
to.
So
we
are
have-
they giving this to each new birth now?
each family that's having
Wonderful.
a subsequent child
Oh,
gets
that
one
is
of those
wonderful.
for
That
each
is-
child.
That is wonderful.
And we are going now for a second printing, and I'm going to be knocking on doors and asking people to contribute money to get the second printing off the ground.
Now, one of the things, too, I know that you got very much interested in was, before it even was established, was Kendall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's at the opposite extreme of the baby. This is the older generation, if you will. And I guess I wanted to ask you, you're living, I believe, at Kendall now.
That's correct.
Has it lived up to your expectations?
Oh my yes, oh my yes. Even the things I didn't think to expect are there.
Good.
Yeah.
And let me ask sort of a double question. What do you think, first of all, is the impact of Kendall on Oberlin?
I think that's hard to answer. I think that,
I assume it's positive.
oh yes, in general, I would say there's very little to complain about as far as the community is concerned. I think that Kendall has worked very well into Oberlin, and a lot of that is because people who hadn't had some time in Oberlin before they moved to Kendall have come from very similar kinds of backgrounds. They also, many of them had friends, and the friends were persuasive in getting them to come. So I think I've been asked a question, as a matter of fact. I belong to First Church, and a great many people who have moved to Kendall have joined First Church. But a neighbor of mine said, do you think there's resentment in the congregation about this influx of diluting the original membership? And I said, well, I really don't think that any of us belongs to that mindset that says we've got ours now, pull up the drawbridge. We are very glad to welcome new people. And the other thing, of course, is that a lot of there were 34 homes about to go on the market of Oberlin people when Kendall opened.
Many, I had forgotten that there were that many.
Yes. Yeah, but not everybody, of course, planned to move in right away. But but there are 150 or 60 people at Kendall. So the percentage of Oberlin people who moved into Kendall is still quite small.
Now let me ask, the other part of that is, do the Kendall people who were not from Oberlin originally like the community? Are they meshing well?
I think so. I think so. This town, whether we may be annoyed with little things here and there at times, but this town has a great appeal, and we already have a large senior population, as you well know.
Yes,
so it isn't as though we become suddenly a big block of older people when there weren't any older people before. So I don't think that the impact has been as great and as it might be other places. The other part of your question is how has the community of Oberlin affected the community of Kendall? I think everybody is absolutely madly in love with being having as much access to music as we have here. Continuous music and of excellent world-class quality. And as a consequence, there's never, except during breaks, of course, there's almost never a day when you can't go to a recital or a concert if you want to.
If you want to. And I see the Kendall bus delivering people.
We're making great use of the Allen Art Museum as well. And the Allen Art Museum has been responsive in having senior teas, which a lot of our people, Kendall people, go to.
So it looks like a very fine arrangement all the way around.
It seems to be. It seems to be.
Let me ask you one other thing, and then we'll take our break. I think we're about at that time. But it springs sort of from Kendall in a way, because first we were talking about young people, babies, and now we're talking about older people. And about at the same time Kendall came this the Living and Learning Institute, and I believe you were very much a spearhead of that movement here. Could you tell us something about that? What the concept is, how it's going?
Well, the origin of the idea, it's like spontaneous generation. It occurred all over the world, actually. The French with their third universities and so on. The idea of continuing education past the normal baccalaureate age has been growing, and I think perhaps the Second World War had a lot to do with that, and subsequent wars with GI Bills for people to go back to school. But the notion that people could retire early with enough funds to take care of themselves without working means that those of us who have been hooked on education from a very early age have a chance to lobby for our hobby the rest of our lives if we want to. Well, it seemed to me just almost inevitable that people coming to Oberlin after having retired and going into a continuing care retirement center where they didn't have to cook and they didn't have to clean and they didn't even have to mow the lawn or shovel snow, would say, hey, we got time to do some of these things. So I had been talking with Al McKay and some others at the college for quite some time before, and saying, these people are coming and they're going to be looking for intellectual stimulation. What is Oberlin College going to be doing to satisfy that? And I admit I too was concerned about auditing overload, that a lot of people, more people would want to audit classes than there might be spaces for them. So, and I wanted something for myself. Let me be very honest about that. It was the enlightened self-interest. So when we were about to during the time that Kendall was in development, the college, specifically Fred Starr, came to the conclusion that something of that sort would be a good idea. He appointed Al McKay and Harry Daw to explore that, and at the same time, I think Roy Church of LCC, with his passion for education as well, and Fred decided to put this together for a joint-sponsored Institute for Learning and Retirement. So in July of '93, about 75 of us got together at Stevenson on campus, and in October, 35 of those people who agreed to be on committees got together at Harry Wilbur's house, and we had a machine and a name, and we were up and going.
And it's still flourishing.
Oh, it's flourishing.
No.
I just came back yesterday. Wonderful day at Cleveland Art Museum. We had a whole busload of us. We went up and spent the whole day, and it's part of a course on Impressionism that the Institute is giving.
Do you still have an active role in this?
I'm
leadership role?
I'm immediate past president. I am deliberately distancing myself from governance for several reasons. One, again, because of self-interest. I want to do some other things. I don't have time to do them all. But also because I think that if it's going to be a viable institute, the leadership has to turn over.
Yes. Why don't we take our break now, and we'll be back in just a minute or two, and there'll be a phone number, and you can call if you would like, and also, and we hope you will, and also then we will get into some other interests that our guest tonight, Marian Baum, has. So we'll be back in just a few minutes.
These days, the media seems to move faster than ever. No sooner does something happen than the TV cameras are there covering it. There before almost anyone else. Almost. Please support the American Red Cross. The need is real. The time is now. Help can't wait.
Welcome back, and I believe the number is being scrolled. It's 775-1635 if you would like to call our guest with comments or questions. While we're waiting to see if there's anybody out there that would like to talk with you, let's talk about this, which you
Oh, thank you,
in.
Dick. Yes.
The Friends of the Listening Post. Tell us about this. Sounds fascinating.
Well, the listening post is a fascinating concept. It also, I believe, meets a very timely need. The program itself originated in Denver about 16 years ago.
Just to make sure everybody can see it.
Can you see it?
I hope everybody can see that.
Okay. Where a woman named Mabel Barth started just a very kind of casual communication center in a junior college, community college in Denver. And she was working on a thesis in communications, and it occurred to her that there was not enough opportunity for casual, friendly conversation. You could go to a counselor if you had a serious problem. You could go to your advisor if you needed your courses changed or something of the sort. But you didn't have somebody to just talk about what kind of day you were having, or how good things were, or how bad things were, or to help you, maybe as you would with a friend, sort out possible courses of action, solutions to problems, whatever. So she started this, and it very rapidly grew. There are now something like 200 of them around the country and around the world. There are 50 of them in the public schools in Denver alone.
Is this aimed primarily at teenage people?
Actually, it's possible to use it with any age people. I think maybe nursery school kids are a little too young, but K through 12 is certainly suitable, and then of course junior college and bachelor's degree granting colleges, fine too. But in any case, it's a technique that's so simple that people keep thinking there must be more to it than that. Actually, it is as simple as it sounds, namely, in our situation, for instance, in January, we're going to have a team of 2 people, and we hope to have a good integration, both ethnically and gender-wise, to come into a school on the same day each week, and we have a bright, cheery tablecloth we spread on a table, and we put our sign up, and we have coloring books and paper and crayons, and usually a snack. And we're going to do this at Prospect and at Eastwood at least one day a week. It depends on, it's all volunteers, you see.
Who've had this training.
Who have had training, yeah. Well, this item came to Mary Hammond's attention. Mary Hammond, our audience will recall, is a Baptist minister as well as a member of the school board. And she was chair of the youth committee of the Interagency Council. That's a committee that I participate in. And when she heard about it, it sounded good to her, and she sent me some information about it and called me and said, "What do you think of it?" And I said, I would be very, very careful with this program because potentially I think it has great potential for good. But on the other hand, I would want to be sure that these people were very carefully trained. First of all, we don't want them taking stands on issues that may or may not be either good for the kids or congruent with their families and their school's point of view. Another thing we don't want is to have people gossiping about kids and whatnot. So I said I would like to be very sure that the training emphasizes a lot of ethics and a lot of specifics in how to go about this in such a way that you're not treading on the toes of school counselors or of school psychologists or principals, and that you have a channel for where you want to put your anxieties as well. So guess what? I got the job of training people. And I'm very happy to do it.
Have you got volunteers already, and do you need more?
Oh, yes, indeed. And one of the things we're using this entire semester to get the word out to the community and get feedback from the community about who do you want to do this listening.
You're so meshed in your career over the years, that just came right out.
It's hard.
It's embedded in you.
Yeah. Who do you want to do the listening? Who are the people that you want to, and how do you want them trained? What do you want them to know? So I would be very happy, and have talked to several groups already, churches, social clubs. I'm going to talk to Spectrum on the 7th of November, to get the word out so that it becomes a community operation rather than just one small group functioning that way.
So what would be your optimum group if you could in January have?
I'd like to have 50 people go through training. There's no obligation. You don't have to agree to be a listener in the schools if you go through training. But I would like, the training is excellent. I mean, it's something that you ordinarily do quite automatically. On the other hand, if you were going to be doing it with school children, you'd want some ice-breaking techniques and so on. You'd also want some channels through which to route concerns.
And somebody will come and do the training. Is that how it works, or would you do it?
No, actually, I'm building a staff right now of people to do it, and that's all volunteer too.
Very good. It occurs to me that could work for older people, possibly in
nursing
homes or something.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Of course, you can't begin everything at once.
Well, what we are doing, however, is that we're planning. Pat Holsworth at the library has a number of youngsters who come after school, and she has said that she would like very much for us to come, and that could be our kind of community showplace that people can come look at it. So we hope in early January to start that.
sounds as if that would be. So who should they call? Who do they get in touch with?
Well, they can call me at
You've got a
775.
yellow sheet there.
I've got a yellow sheet here. This is the invitation to the Saturday luncheon for Friends of the Listening Post. And the public is welcome, but you just have to make a reservation.
The date is?
The date is Saturday, October 28 at 11:45 at Kendall. And it's a Dutch treat lunch. You come and buy your own lunch, and we sit together in a private dining room and talk and eat.
Good.
Or you can call Clark Shepard, who is one of the people who has also been caught up by enthusiasm in this program, and he's at 775-4825.
Okay, fine. Thank you. And the number here, if you wish to talk to Marian, is 775-1635. Well, let's see. It's what more can we talk about here?
I'd like to talk to you some more about the Access program, because
All right.
it too is related to helping young people make the most of their opportunities.
Now, that's what we call the mentoring, isn't it? The
That's right.
And you are coordinator.
Coordinator.
of mentoring. Let me give the full title here for everybody. This is impressive. For the Lorain County Access Scholarship Program. Tell us.
Well, the Access program is in its second year of granting scholarships to kids from low-income families throughout the county, not just Oberlin. And we have 2 Oberlin students on scholarship now that were sponsored by given by the Access program. But we have also, we had 17 others in Lorain County. We are choosing now, the program is in the process of choosing 31 students who will graduate at the end of May this year. So the Access program is specifically designated for kids who ordinarily would not, perhaps, go to college. And each of them is given a mentor. And without mentoring, it's my conviction that their rate of success in moving from high school to college is going to be much lower.
Now, do they select themselves, or do they ask to be in this, or are they identified by the principals, or how does this?
Oh, there's a committee they apply to in each high school. So
Do you have that pretty well set up in each of the schools now in Lorain County?
Access does. I mean,
Access
Carol
does.
Hoffman, an Oberlin woman,
I see.
is
She's the
executive
one.
director of Access. Now, my job is simply to recruit people who from similar backgrounds or who are interested in similar academic pursuits with the individual kids. So the first thing I have to do is to get a profile of the youngster who's going to get the scholarship.
Who, if I may interrupt you, is how old at this point?
17,
17.
18.
So it'll be for the senior year.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And then to try to match each one of them by ethnic and gender background. So that, and in interest, we also try to, one of my proudest achievements was that we found 3 CPAs and 4 physicians to mentor kids who want to go into those fields.
Good. Wonderful. Wonderful. And then is there some kind of, when you speak of scholarship, is there some kind of money available? Or you're just talking
The money is
academia as far as scholarship?
Yeah, well, actually, it's financial counseling to utilize all the facilities, as well as the gift of a specific amount of money. And the corporate sponsors of Access are the contributors, and they sponsor a specific student.
For how long? A year? Or
However long the money lasts in relation to.
So it wouldn't be a full ride for the 4 years.
No.
But it would help.
It's usually about $500 a year or $500 a semester, but it's a last dollar kind of scholarship.
I see. And you've been getting good response?
Oh
from
yes.
kids?
Oh yes.
Are there many Oberlin students interested in this?
Well, we had. I don't know how many are interested at the moment. I hope there are lots.
Now, let me ask you something else.
Okay.
I'm just fascinated with all the things you do here. And you are a member, I believe, of the Bioethics Committee of Allen Memorial Hospital. Tell me about that. Tell us all about that.
Well, it's a fascinating group. Ethics is of great concern to me, and because of my training and my practice, I have spent a lot of time in medical settings, and I'm very aware of a lot of the ethical problems that arise. One of our biggest efforts most recently, about 3 years ago at Allen Memorial Hospital, was to educate the community about advance directives and durable powers of attorney, so that if you are, for instance, incapacitated, unable to communicate your wishes, that they are translated legally into a document that the hospital and the physicians and staff will follow. We did a fair job on that. You may remember we had a meeting at the Oberlin Public Library where we had questions and answers and so on that. We spent about a year on that, getting the program. And we're currently working on an ethical code. It may sound strange to you, that may be surprising, but there has not been a uniform ethical code for hospitals. So
nationwide, it seems to be a very important issue now,
yes,
particularly with older people, terminal illnesses, and what you do, and so forth. Are there medical people on this committee?
Oh yes, most of the people are physicians and nurses and other hospital administrators. But there are also those of us who are ministers, psychologists, ethicists, so that my persuasion is, and my corner on out of which I look at these things, is always in terms of how does it translate to behavior, because I'm a behavioral scientist.
Well, we're running down on our time here. I think we can get in 2 more things, if you'll hang in there with me. It's just fascinating, and I wish we could take all of these things in more depth. You're a board member of the family planning of Lorain County, too, aren't you? You're still active in that?
Oh, yes.
And what does that do? What is that?
Well, family planning is a women's health agency, basically.
Is it a governmental unit? Or
No.
It's
It's a private agency, United Way funded, but of course we are also funded by a number of health entitlements. And like every other field of health, we're in a state of constant change, especially now. But our object is to reach particularly low-income women who would otherwise not have health care.
And that's working well, is it?
Very, very effective.
How do people participate in that?
Oh, they simply call up Family Planning of Lorain County, and in the phone book, we're located in Elyria.
Very good.
And ask to make an appointment and come in. And we also, if you want a group, if you wanted a health educator to come talk about sexual health, sexually transmitted diseases or whatnot, we have very good and wonderful bibliographic materials, educational materials to distribute.
Wonderful.
Give away.
Do you go into the schools at all?
Oh, yes.
That's marvelous. My last question has sort of 2 parts. You are, I believe, president of the Friends of the Oberlin College Library. Is that correct? And which I gather is thriving and doing great things. For the library.
Well, it's been doing more and more every year, and we're having our annual meeting this coming Saturday.
I believe Nancy Dye is the speaker.
Nancy Dye is the speaker for the dinner, yes. And we have a woman who is an authority on printing and the history of printing, who is going to be doing an afternoon talk as well.
Then I believe you also have an appointment as research associate in psychology with the visiting scholar arrangement at the college. And my question was, and this is, I've thought about this, I'll bet in some way that research appointment and being on the Friends of the Library intertwine with each other.
Well, only at the very foundation, namely
okay.
that as a researcher, I value the library so very highly. And as I know I'm speaking to the converted when I say to you that libraries have always been just very fundamental When I went to the library to get all 14 volumes of Freud, for instance, that's where I learned. Where would I find that stuff otherwise? Nowadays, of course, I don't go to Mud Library for that, but the periodicals and the access to fields that abut mine or interact with mine are always so valuable. But actually, the Friends of the Library, I think, came about more because of my devotion to libraries. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the research associate position at the college. It's somewhat like the associate scholar position, except that I think when mine was established many years ago, and it's renewed annually, it was I got this particular title because I have a PhD. If I hadn't had a PhD, I probably would have been an associate. But most everything I do in the field of mental health, which is virtually everything I do, is related to that appointment.
So you use that for access, particularly for research purposes?
Yes, and I can also, in the past, I've been able to apply for funding and so on, and using that as my credential.
That's a wonderful program they have.
Oh, it is. It's marvelous. People ask me, well, you do this and you don't get paid. And my joke is that I'm entitled to all the paper clips I can use in any 1 year.
Isn't that wonderful? As we've sat here tonight, I can't help but observe that I wonder whether a 24-hour day is sufficient for you. You do sleep occasionally and eat and so forth.
I'm very lucky. I have a high energy level.
Wonderful. Marian, we want to thank you so very much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Down. And is there any last thing in all of this impressive material that you wanted to comment on?
No, I just want people to anyone who has a group who is interested in this citizen involvement in the public schools program called the Listening Post, to call us and let us send speakers, because we'll set up a demonstration listening post for you and your own group.
Great. Okay. So we could say certainly that any people who out there who are program chairmen of organizations would heed this. Federal Habitation Program. We're so appreciative of this, and thank you very, very much for being with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us tonight, and we will have another interesting guest for you at the last Thursday in November. And until then, this is Dick Lothrop saying good night to you.